A school bus route is interrupted by a barking dog. The reason behind this surprising roadblock leaves students and teachers in disbelief. And if you cherish your family and love stories like this, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and avoid 10 years of bad luck. A cool spring breeze swept across the parking lot of Maplewood Elementary School as the yellow school bus approached its usual drop-off point. Inside, 24 fifth-grade students chatted enthusiastically about their upcoming science fair projects. Tom Richardson, their teacher, sat in his usual spot near the front, reviewing the day's lesson plans while occasionally glancing at his energetic students. Sarah Thompson and Michael Chun, sitting in the third row, were deep in discussion about their volcano project when the bus suddenly jerked to a stop. The unexpected halt sent several students lurching forward in their seats, their conversations cutting off abruptly. Standing directly in front of the bus was a medium-sized brown and white dog, its stance firm and unwavering. The dog, known around the neighborhood as Buddy, stood his ground with unusual determination. His normally friendly demeanor was replaced with an intensity that caught everyone's attention. His ears were perked forward, and his body was rigid, displaying none of the typical tail-wagging greeting he usually offered to passing vehicles and pedestrians. Mr. Wells, the bus driver who had been manning this route for 15 years, furrowed his brow in confusion. He'd seen plenty of animals cross the road before, but something about Buddy's behavior seemed different. The dog wasn't just crossing. He was deliberately blocking their path, staring directly at the bus with unwavering focus. The usual morning chatter inside the bus transformed into whispered observations and pointed fingers. "What's wrong with Buddy?" whispered Jenny Martinez to her seatmate. Other students pressed their faces against the windows, trying to get a better look at the unusual standoff. Mr. Wells gently pressed the horn, expecting the sound to startle Buddy away. Instead, the dog planted his paws more firmly on the pavement, maintaining eye contact with the driver. When Mr. Wells attempted to slowly edge the bus forward, Buddy responded by taking a defensive stance, barking with unprecedented urgency. The students, who normally would have found such a situation amusing, sensed the gravity of the moment. Even the most talkative ones fell silent, watching the scene unfold with growing concern. The familiar playful dog they often saw around the school grounds had transformed into something else entirely, a guardian with a clear purpose. Tom Richardson observed the situation carefully, noting how his students' initial amusement had shifted to genuine concern. As an educator with 10 years of experience, he had developed a keen sense for distinguishing between ordinary disruptions and genuine causes for concern. This situation definitely felt like the latter. The tension inside the bus continued to build as Buddy remained steadfast in his position. The morning sun cast long shadows across the pavement, and the usual sounds of students arriving at school seemed strangely distant. Something was definitely not right, and everyone on bus number 27 could feel it. Tom Richardson stood up from his seat, adjusting his tie as he moved toward the front of the bus. The subtle vibration beneath his feet caught his attention immediately. A barely perceptible tremor that most might dismiss as the bus's idling engine. But something about it felt distinctly different. "Stay in your seats, everyone," he instructed firmly, making eye contact with the students who watched him with growing curiosity. As he stepped off the bus, the trembling became more noticeable. The pavement seemed to hum with an unusual energy that sent a chill down his spine. The morning air felt crisp against his face as he surveyed the surroundings. Buddy Stillmate, aiming his protective stance, shifted his attention between Tom and something further down the road. The dog's behavior became increasingly agitated, taking a few steps toward the bend in the road before turning back to ensure Tom was following. Tom's confusion turned to understanding as he noticed small pebbles beginning to roll across the pavement. The vibration was getting stronger, and now he could hear a distant rumbling sound. Following Buddy's lead, he walked several yards ahead, careful to maintain his balance on the increasingly unstable ground. Around the bend, the source of Buddy's concern became frighteningly clear. The hillside adjacent to the road showed signs of imminent collapse. Small streams of dirt and rocks were already beginning to cascade down the slope, and cracks were forming in the earth above. The recent spring rains had saturated the ground, creating perfect conditions for a landslide. Without hesitation, Tom pulled out his phone and dialed emergency services. His voice remained steady as he reported the situation. "This is Tom Richardson at Maplewood Elementary. We have an immediate landslide risk on Mountain View Road, approximately quarter-mile from the school. We have a bus full of students, and we need immediate assistance." Back on the bus, the students had abandoned any pretense of staying in their seats. They clustered near the windows, watching as Buddy paced back and forth between Tom and the dangerous area, his role as sentinel unwavering. The dog's instincts had detected what human senses had initially missed. "Look at Buddy," whispered Emily Rodriguez, one of the more observant students. "He's trying to keep us away from that part of the road." Other students nodded in agreement, their earlier skepticism replaced by growing admiration for the street dog's actions. The minutes seemed to stretch endlessly as they waited for help to arrive. Tom returned to the bus, instructing Mr. Wells to slowly back the vehicle away from the danger zone. Buddy remained at his post, occasionally barking when small sections of earth would give way, as if warning everyone to maintain their distance. The scene unfolding before them provided a real-time lesson in both natural disasters and heroism, though not in any way Tom had ever planned to teach. He watched his students' faces, noting how they alternated between concern for their safety and amazement at Buddy's protective instincts. The dog they had passed countless times on their way to school, often without a second glance, had transformed into something extraordinary in their eyes. The wail of emergency sirens pierced the morning air as 3 fire trucks and 2 police cars arrived at the scene. Chief Martinez, a veteran firefighter with salt and pepper hair, quickly assessed the situation. His team deployed geological monitoring equipment, while others established a safety perimeter around the unstable area. "The dog was right," Chief Martinez announced after reviewing the initial readings. "This whole section is highly unstable." If that bus had continued, he left the sentence unfinished, but everyone understood the implications. Technical instruments confirmed what Buddy had somehow sensed minutes earlier. A major landslide was imminent. The firefighters worked efficiently, setting up barriers and redirecting traffic while geologists arrived to evaluate the hillside's condition. Buddy remained nearby, watching the proceedings with alert interest, only moving when the emergency teams needed to access different areas. Once the immediate danger was secured, Tom gathered his students and, with permission from school administration, organized an impromptu field trip. Their destination, the modest home of Agnes Thompson, known to the neighborhood as Dona Agnes, where Buddy had been living for the past 2 years. The walk to Dona Agnes's house was filled with excited chatter as students processed the morning's events. They found the elderly woman tending to her front garden, her silver hair tied back in a neat bun. Her face lit up with a warm smile when she saw the group approaching. "I was wondering when you'd all come visiting," she said, straightening up from her flower bed. "After what Buddy did this morning, I figured it wouldn't be long." She invited them to sit in her backyard, where weathered but well-maintained lawn chairs formed a semicircle under an old oak tree. Buddy settled at Dona Agnes's feet as she began sharing stories about his past heroics. "This isn't the first time he's helped people," she revealed, gently patting Buddy's head. "Last winter, he alerted me to a gas leak in Mrs. Henderson's house next door. And 3 months ago, he prevented a child from running into traffic during the farmer's market." The students listened intently as Dona Agnes recounted incident after incident. She told them about how she found Buddy 2 years ago, skinny and nervous, during a thunderstorm. "He wasn't wearing a collar, but I could tell he had training," she explained. "The way he responded to certain situations, his alertness to danger, it was clear he had a background in service work." Tom noticed how his students' expressions changed as they heard these stories. What they had witnessed that morning wasn't a one-time occurrence, but part of a pattern. Buddy wasn't just a lucky stray. He was a dog with a mysterious past and an unwavering drive to protect. "Sometimes," Dona Agnes continued, her voice growing softer, "I think he was sent here for a reason. Not just to keep an old lady company, but to watch over our whole community." She looked at the children gathered around her, their young faces full of wonder and curiosity. Today proved that theory right, didn't it? The following days at Maplewood Elementary buzzed with renewed energy as Tom's 5th grade class transformed their regular classroom activities into something more meaningful. During their morning meeting, Jake Anderson, usually quiet and reserved, raised his hand with unexpected enthusiasm. "Mr. Richardson," he said, standing up straighter than usual, "I think we should organize something special for Buddy. Maybe a celebration or an awards ceremony." The suggestion sparked immediate interest among his classmates, who began calling out ideas simultaneously. Tom watched as his typically disconnected group of students suddenly united around a common purpose. He divided them into committees, each responsible for different aspects of the event. The usually challenging task of getting students to work together suddenly seemed effortless as they organized themselves with surprising efficiency. The Arts and Crafts Committee, led by Maria Santos and David Kim, took over the back of the classroom, spreading out large sheets of poster board. Their fingers became stained with markers as they created colorful banners proclaiming Buddy, our local hero, and paws that save lives. Even students who normally showed little interest in art class volunteered to help. Meanwhile, the event's planning committee huddled around two desks pushed together, brainstorming activities. They decided on a parade route that would start at the school and end at the local park, where Buddy had performed many of his heroic acts. Sarah Chun, usually focused solely on academics, surprised everyone by suggesting they create a theatrical performance recreating Buddy's various rescues. The writing team, consisting of students who typically groaned at composition assignments, voluntarily stayed during lunch break to compose speeches and poems about Buddy. Tom observed with amazement as Ryan Turner, who had never voluntarily written more than a paragraph, filled 3 pages with a heartfelt tribute to the dog's bravery. Between classes, students rushed to share progress updates. The normally rigid social groups that defined 5th grade dynamics dissolved as popular kids, quiet students, athletes, and academic achievers worked side by side. Even Matthews and Lisa Rodriguez, who hadn't spoken to each other all year due to a playground disagreement, found themselves collaborating on a song about Buddy. The transformation extended beyond just the students. Parents began calling the school, offering to help with preparations. Mrs. Anderson, Jake's mother and a professional event planner, volunteered her services. Mr. Garcia, whose restaurant supplied the school cafeteria, offered to cater the celebration. During their planning sessions, Tom noticed something remarkable. His students were unconsciously incorporating their regular curriculum into the project. They used math skills to calculate parade timing and supply needs, applied writing techniques to craft compelling narratives, and even incorporated scientific principles when discussing how Buddy might have sensed the impending landslide. The classroom itself underwent a physical transformation. Walls previously decorated with multiplication tables and grammar rules now featured timeline charts of Buddy's heroic acts, carefully researched and verified by the students' investigative committee. A hero wall appeared near the door, where students posted daily notes about acts of kindness they witnessed, inspired by Buddy's example. The morning of the celebration dawned clear and bright, perfect weather for an outdoor event. Maplewood Elementary's courtyard, usually empty at 7 a.m., buzzed with activity as volunteers set up chairs, hung banners, and arranged refreshment tables. The transformation was remarkable. Streamers in the school colors of blue and gold draped between trees, and a makeshift stage stood where students usually played basketball. Parents arrived early, carrying trays of homemade treats and helping with last-minute preparations. The local bakery had donated a specially designed cake featuring Buddy's likeness, and Mr. Garcia's restaurant staff busily arranged a buffet that would feed the growing crowd. The turnout exceeded everyone's expectations. It seemed the entire neighborhood had embraced the celebration. Tom stood at the podium, adjusting the microphone while watching his students prepare for their presentations. They wore matching t-shirts designed by the art committee, featuring a silhouette of Buddy with the words, "Everyday heroes walk among us," printed beneath. The nervous energy that typically preceded school performances was present, but it felt different, more purposeful. The ceremony began with a series of student presentations. Emily Martinez stepped forward first, her voice clear and confident as she shared her research on animal instincts and heroism. "Scientists have proven that dogs can sense things humans can't," she explained, gesturing to charts the science committee had prepared. But what makes Buddy special isn't just his abilities. It's his choice to use them to help others. Following Emily, the drama club performed their original play, A Day in the Life of a Hero. The students had recreated several of Buddy's rescue scenes, including the recent landslide incident. The audience watched, captivated, as the young actors portrayed not just the events, but the emotional impact Buddy had on the community. Throughout the presentations, Buddy sat beside Donna Agnes in the front row, occasionally wagging his tail when students mentioned his name. He remained calm despite the crowd, his presence adding authenticity to the celebration. Several students had noticed how he would perk up during certain parts of the presentations, as if he understood he was the focus of attention. The most touching moment came when Jake, who had overcome his fear of public speaking, read his poem about courage. "Heroes don't always wear capes," he began, his voice growing stronger with each word. "Sometimes they have 4 legs and fur, and teach us that being brave means helping others even when you're scared." Tom felt his throat tighten with emotion as he watched the impact of the ceremony on his students and the community. Children who had struggled with self-confidence now stood tall, speaking about leadership and responsibility. Parents who had barely interacted before were engaged in animated conversations, sharing stories about their own experiences with unexpected heroes. As the formal presentations concluded, the atmosphere shifted to celebration. Music played while children and adults mingled, sharing refreshments and stories. The hero wall had been relocated outside, and visitors added their own notes about everyday acts of heroism they'd witnessed, creating a growing testament to the ripple effect of Buddy's influence. The local newspaper, the Daily Chronicle, arrived early the next morning to cover what had begun as a school celebration but evolved into a community phenomenon. Reporter Sarah Martinez, known for her human interest stories, sat in Donna Agnes's living room, notebook in hand, while Buddy dozed contentedly at her feet. "Tell me about the first time you met Buddy," Sarah prompted, watching as Donna Agnes's eyes lit up with the memory. The elderly woman described that stormy night 2 years ago, her voice warm with affection. "He was soaked to the bone, but his eyes held such intelligence and gentleness. I knew immediately he was special, though I never imagined just how special." The interview continued as students from Tom's class filtered in, each eager to share their perspective on Buddy's impact. Jake, still riding the high from his poetry reading, described how working on the celebration had helped him overcome his fear of public speaking. "Buddy showed us that being brave isn't about not being scared," he explained, demonstrating a maturity that surprised even his teacher. "It's about doing what's right anyway." The resulting article, published the following Sunday, occupied the entire front page of the local section. The headline read, "More Than a Dog: How One Stray United a Community." The story quickly gained traction online, with social media shares reaching far beyond their small town. Local television stations began calling, requesting interviews and footage of Buddy's heroic acts. City Council member Patricia Rodriguez read the article with particular interest. During the next council meeting, she proposed creating an annual Buddy Award for community heroism, designed to recognize both human and animal acts of courage and service. The proposal passed unanimously, with the mayor suggesting they extend the program to include a scholarship fund for students who demonstrated exceptional community service. The media attention brought unexpected benefits to the community. Local animal shelters reported increased adoption rates as families were inspired by Buddy's story. The school board approved funding for a new character education program, using Buddy's various rescues as case studies in courage, responsibility, and community service. Tom's students found themselves at the center of this growing movement. They were invited to speak at other schools about their experience organizing the celebration and what they had learned about community involvement. The normally rigid boundaries between grades and social groups continued to dissolve as students collaborated on new projects inspired by Buddy's example. Donna Agnes welcomed each new reporter and visitor with grace, though she politely declined several offers to write books or make movies about Buddy's story. "Some things," she would say, smiling at Buddy's relaxed form beside her, "are too special to commercialize. What matters is the impact on our community, not the publicity." The story's reach extended beyond their town limits. Other communities began implementing their own versions of the Buddy Award, recognizing local heroes who demonstrated similar courage and dedication to helping others. What had started as one dog's instinctive act of protection had sparked a widespread movement celebrating everyday heroism. As spring progressed into early summer, Buddy's reputation continued to grow, but not just because of media attention. A series of seemingly unrelated incidents began to draw notice throughout the community. First, he alerted a jogger to a fallen power line after a thunderstorm. Days later, he led a maintenance worker to a water main leak before it could cause significant damage to the school's foundation. These events created an atmosphere of heightened awareness whenever Buddy appeared. People began to watch him more closely, noting his behavior and reactions. Some community members even changed their daily routines to pass by areas where Buddy frequently patrolled, feeling safer in his presence. Then came the Wednesday that tested everyone's faith. 7-year-old Tommy Martinez, a second grader known for his adventurous spirit, disappeared during afternoon recess at the local park. The initial calm of the teachers quickly dissolved into concern when the first sweep of the playground yielded no results. The news spread rapidly through the community's text message chains and social media groups. Parents left work early, joining the growing search party. Police officers arrived with search dogs, and volunteers began organizing into groups to comb the surrounding areas. Tom's 5th grade class, still at school for their afternoon sessions, watched anxiously through classroom windows as emergency vehicles arrived at the park. Buddy will find him, Jake declared with unexpected conviction, breaking the tense silence in the classroom. His classmates nodded in agreement, their faith in the dog's abilities now unshakable. Tom, while trying to maintain professional composure, found himself sharing their hope. As if on cue, Buddy appeared at the park's entrance, his usual casual demeanor replaced by intense focus. He moved with purpose, nose to the ground, ignoring the usual greetings and treats offered by community members. The search teams, recognizing his past successes, quickly cleared a path for him. The assembled crowd watched as Buddy worked, his methodical movements speaking to a level of training that seemed increasingly evident. He circled the playground equipment twice before suddenly lifting his head, ears perked forward. Without warning, he took off toward the wooded area behind the park, running with unprecedented urgency. Parents, teachers, and emergency responders followed, struggling to keep pace with the determined dog. Tom's students, who had convinced him to let them join the search effort, stayed close together, their earlier classroom projects about Buddy's heroism taking on new significance in this real-life drama. The tension in the air was palpable as everyone followed Buddy's lead. The sun was beginning to set, casting long shadows through the trees and adding to the growing anxiety. Searchlights from emergency vehicles swept across the darkening park, creating an eerie atmosphere that only heightened the sense of urgency. Buddy's determined path led the search party deeper into the wooded area behind the park, an undeveloped stretch of land that local children had always been warned to avoid. The dog moved with increasing certainty, pausing occasionally to ensure his followers kept pace. Emergency responders maintained radio contact, updating their coordinates as they ventured further from the park's boundaries. The dense undergrowth made progress difficult for the humans, but Buddy navigated it effortlessly. He stopped abruptly near a massive oak tree, its trunk split into multiple sections near the base. The dog's behavior changed instantly. His tail began wagging, and he started barking in a distinct pattern different from his usual alert barks. "Listen," called out Officer Rodriguez, raising her hand for silence. Through the fading daylight and growing shadows, a small whimper could be heard. Flashlight beams converged on the base of the tree, revealing a narrow opening between the split trunk sections. Tommy's voice, small but clear, responded to the calls of the search team. "I'm here. I am stuck." The 7-year-old had wedged himself into the hollow space while playing explorer, unable to maneuver back out. The tree's configuration had muffled his earlier cries for help, making it nearly impossible for traditional search methods to locate him. Emergency responders quickly assessed the situation. The opening was too narrow for adults to enter, and the positioning made it difficult to reach Tommy directly. The fire department's rescue team began discussing the possibility of cutting into the tree when Sarah Chun, one of Tom's students, stepped forward with an idea. "We need someone small," she suggested, pointing to Lisa Rodriguez, the smallest student in their class. Lisa, typically shy and reserved, straightened her shoulders and volunteered immediately. Under careful supervision and with safety gear provided by the rescue team, she managed to squeeze partially into the opening. The gathered crowd held their breath as Lisa worked to help guide Tommy toward the opening. Buddy remained at his post, occasionally whining encouragingly, his eyes fixed on the rescue attempt. After what seemed like hours, but was actually only minutes, Tommy emerged, dirty and tearful, but otherwise unharmed. The relief was immediate and overwhelming. Parents hugged their children, teachers wiped away tears, and the emergency responders exchanged satisfied nods. Tommy's parents rushed forward to embrace their son, thanking everyone involved in the rescue between sobs of relief. Buddy received his share of gratitude, accepting gentle pats and praise with characteristic humility. The gathered crowd watched in amazement as he performed a final check of the area before calmly sitting beside Tommy, as if to ensure the boy was truly safe. The rescue of Tommy Martinez catapulted Buddy's story from local interest to national news. Within days, major television networks descended upon the small town, their satellite trucks lining the usually quiet streets. The morning shows competed for exclusive coverage, each wanting to feature the extraordinary dog who seemed to have a sixth sense for danger. Good Morning America won the privilege of first broadcast, setting up their equipment in the park where the rescue had taken place. The segment producer arranged an elaborate shoot, bringing together all the people Buddy had helped over the past months. Donna Agnes, typically private, agreed to participate only after the students from Tom's class insisted her presence was essential to tell Buddy's complete story. During the live broadcast, the host interviewed various community members, each sharing their perspective on Buddy's impact. Tommy Martinez, now recovered from his ordeal, sat close to the dog while describing how he felt when he heard Buddy's bark outside the tree. "I knew everything would be okay then," he said, his small hand buried in Buddy's fur. "Everyone says Buddy always knows what to do." The most significant moment of the broadcast came when the host revealed an unexpected development. The Martinez family, deeply grateful for their son's rescue, had approached Donna Agnes with a proposal. They offered to provide a permanent home for Buddy, complete with a large fenced yard and the promise of continued community involvement. The announcement created a moment of hushed anticipation. Everyone knew Donna Agnes's deep attachment to Buddy, and some worried about how she would react to the suggestion. But the elderly woman surprised them all with her response, delivered with gentle wisdom and understanding. "Buddy has always belonged to the community more than to me," she said, her voice steady despite the emotion in her eyes. "The Martinez family can provide him with the space and energy he needs, while still allowing him to continue his important work in our neighborhood." She explained how her advancing age made it increasingly difficult to give Buddy the active lifestyle he deserved. The Martinez family's home, as it turned out, was ideally situated between the school and the park, allowing Buddy to maintain his unofficial patrol route. They promised to keep Donna Agnes's door always open for visits, effectively expanding rather than changing Buddy's family circle. The community rallied around this transition, helping to create a schedule where Buddy could spend time with both families. Students from Tom's class designed and built a special doghouse that would be placed in the Martinez's backyard, incorporating elements that reminded Buddy of his time with Donna Agnes. The television segment ended with shots of Buddy playing with Tommy in his new yard, while Donna Agnes watched from a comfortable chair on the patio. The image perfectly captured the spirit of their arrangement. Not a transfer of ownership, but an expansion of love and care. During the last week of school, Tom Richardson gathered his class for what they thought would be a regular end-of-year discussion. The classroom, still decorated with Buddy-themed projects, fell silent as their teacher cleared his throat, clearly preparing to share something important. "There's something about Buddy that you all need to know," Tom began, his expression thoughtful. "While preparing the documentation for his transition to the Martinez family, we discovered something remarkable about his background. The students leaned forward in their seats, instantly alert. Tom projected an image onto the whiteboard, a professional photograph of a younger Buddy in a service dog vest, standing proudly next to a uniformed handler. Buddy, as it turns out, was once known as Scout, a highly trained search and rescue dog who worked with emergency services in Colorado. The revelation caused a stir among the students. Jake raised his hand immediately. But how did he end up here? And why wasn't he wearing his vest when Donna Agnes found him? Tom explained how Buddy had become separated from his handler during a major forest fire evacuation 2 years ago. The chaos and smoke had disoriented both dog and handler, and despite extensive searches, they couldn't find each other. Somehow, Buddy had traveled hundreds of miles, eventually finding his way to their town and Donna Agnes. His training, Tom continued, explains his extraordinary ability to sense danger and his natural instinct to protect. What we thought was miraculous intuition was actually years of professional experience combined with genuine caring. He showed them more documents detailing Buddy's impressive service record, countless successful searches and rescues. The students processed this information with mixed emotions. Some felt slightly disappointed that Buddy's abilities weren't purely magical, as they'd imagined. Others, like Sarah Chun, saw it differently. This makes him even more special, she argued. He chose to keep helping people even when he wasn't on duty anymore. More details emerged as Tom shared the full story. Buddy's original handler had been notified and, after learning about the dog's new life and important role in the community, made the difficult but understanding decision not to reclaim him. Sometimes, Tom explained, heroes find new ways to serve, new communities to protect. The class spent their final days creating a new section for their Buddy memorial wall, incorporating his professional background while celebrating his continuing impact on their community. They realized that knowing his history didn't diminish his heroism. It enhanced it, showing how training and instinct could combine with love and dedication to create something truly extraordinary. As summer vacation approached, the students learned their most important lesson, that heroism comes in many forms. Whether it's a trained professional performing their duty, a lost dog finding a new purpose, or ordinary people coming together to help their community, true heroism lies not in the scale of the act, but in the choice to help others when given the opportunity. The story of Buddy, or Scout, became more than just a tale of a heroic dog. It became a lesson about resilience, adaptation, and the different ways one can serve and protect others. The students of Maplewood Elementary carried these lessons with them, understanding that sometimes the most extraordinary heroes are the ones who simply choose to do what's right, regardless of their circumstances.